Get ready for it. Yeah, this is it. Go!
Good evening, B1. How are you?
RB2, yeah, not so bad. How things going on your side?
Yeah, good. The view on my Zoom probably looks feels a lot better than the weather outside. It's actually raining at the moment in Perth. It seems like I'm having this bad luck every time I speak to you.
Yeah, well, I think that's the certainly in Melbourne, that's the way the weather's going to be for the next few months, Kev.
Right. Okay. Well, it's been a while since we've spoken, and apologies to the viewers. We've had a hiatus of 2 weeks, but it's been a fairly full-on 2 weeks for you, and we'll touch on that in a moment. But yeah, we literally are 3 weeks out, or just under 3 weeks out to race day for Comrades, and you've had a massive 2 weeks, Hill. So we last spoke when you were at the track doing your interval session, and since then, probably the four things that I've noticed in relation to your training have been your massive 58K hit out, which was your Comrades dress rehearsal. You then had another 25K hit out in the Yangs National Park. You've had a couple of runs in Sydney when you were working, and you've also just pulled off another marathon, or actually ultra marathon, by doing the Great Ocean Road on Sunday, 44-kilometer. So well done on all that. That's massive, and I can't believe you've achieved all that in 2 weeks in amongst a fairly heavy work schedule. So yeah, let me know, how's that feeling, and give me a couple of highlights from those sessions, particularly your marathon on the weekend.
Yeah, no, I hadn't quite processed it, how many of those runs had been in the last few weeks. But I think the good news, Kev, is my body's holding up. So that's probably the most important thing right now. Obviously a few niggles here and there, but I'm feeling pretty good from a body, and no, touch wood, significant injury. So that's all good.
You seem to be at your race weight. You're looking quite lean.
Yeah, I don't know what my race weight is actually, but I've sort of, yeah, I have dropped a bit of weight, but I've maintained sort of around the 75 kg mark. So yeah, I'm sort of happy with that. That feels like the right weight to be for me.
It's good. I'm heading strongly towards the 85K mark.
Yeah. So yeah, no, look, I'm feeling a little tired coming into this sort of taper period, which we're getting to now. But I mean, I think that's the whole point of taper, right? You really peak in your training, which was probably on Sunday with the Great Ocean Road Marathon, and then from now it starts to taper off. So what I'm really hoping is that in the next sort of 3 weeks, I really freshen up. I'm still do a bit of running, obviously, but the main aim is now to freshen up for the race.
Yeah, I'm sure that is the case, and I think your body will, enjoy the break. But I suppose also there's other elements of sleep and just general mental rest as well are going to be important, and trying to get in the zone. But I had some questions for you today, which are more around, I suppose, building your race plan out. And I'm sure, there are a lot of inputs that go into that. And particularly the last 2 weeks would have given you a good idea. And it's great to hear that your body's held up, because that's a key part of that. But what I thought I'd do is just take you through a few questions that'll help potentially build out your race plan. And I suppose just to give that some context, the Comrades Marathon is nearly 90 kilometers, but apart from that, it's an extremely tough course. So I thought, if you don't mind bringing up the course profile, Hill, I know you've got that handy, and I just wanted to have that as the context here around why we're talking about a race plan. So did you want to just talk sort of briefly about that profile, and why you think a race plan is going to be critical?
Yeah. No, this I haven't mapped. We'll talk a bit about the race plan, but you're right, it will be critical. I haven't mapped that out yet fully, but so this elevation map and plan is certainly imprinted in my mind. Yeah, so as you said, Kev, it's close on 90 Ks. I think it's a little bit shorter this year, 88, because they've changed the finish point. But whether it's 88 or 90, I think it's pretty much the same thing. You can see there up until the 60K mark, it's up and down. It's called the down run because ultimately you go down as you go down to sea level down on the right, which is where Durban is, starting in Pietermaritzburg on your left. So yeah, those hills, might not look it on there, but some of those hills are significant, and there's just a lot of up and down. In fact, what I'm told is by the time you get to 60 Ks, you're asking, why is this classified as the down run? And then from there, 60 to sort of 90, you start to drop down significantly. That's obviously when you're tired and fatigued. So that's where, that sort of strength and, having enough strength to deal with those downhills is going to be key. So, but as you said, Kev, the race plan and how you sort of go about it is also going to be absolutely key.
Yeah, so I mean, you're right. First thing that struck me is some of the ups don't look that up on this profile, but I've heard many talks about these ups, and I know the first 18 Ks in particular is a massive climb effectively. So the first 18 Ks of your run is going to be climbing. And, I think what's very noticeable there is that highest point in red and Umlaas Road is you can see the steepness of that climb to the highest point. And then obviously you've got some reprieve after that and then undulations. But I mean, there are some significant hills in there. And as you say, there is that need to manage your efforts and your pace all the way through, because once you get to the 60, 70K mark, you then into some downhill territory, but that's pretty taxing on the legs from what we understand. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's interesting to have that profile up. And then I think then in the context of
maybe my question, just add, Kev, for people who sort of track their elevation, etc. on Strava, the elevation of the course overall is, I think, just under 1,200 meters. And that would all be in the first 60 Ks. As you can see, there's very little ups left once you hit about 60 Ks. So that just puts it into context, 1,200 meters. I think, some of them are incredibly steep, but that gives me a bit of a sense of, how much up there's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hill, thinking about, I suppose, the last couple of weeks in particular, and then take into account that profile and what the race actually looks like. What is it now that you've learned over the last while in particular that you feel you can build into your race plan? What are the things that you're sort of cognizant of coming out of that last period?
Yeah, I think, I've really focused on my long runs, the marathon on the weekend, and then the 58K I did a couple of weeks earlier, on pace, trying to get a feel for around that 6-minute pace. Now, in both of those runs, I ran just over a 6-minute pace. That probably the one that was obviously race conditions was the one on Sunday. So that's a more realistic look at it, and that was actually spot on half the distance. And so, yeah, I think what I've learned is, that pace, while it feels really slow when you start out, it's, by the time you've knocked off 50 Ks or so, you're starting to fatigue, no matter the fact that you're running at a reasonably slow pace. So, having said that, I haven't felt, fortunately, on either of those runs that I had nothing more left. I certainly felt like I could continue at that pace for a while. I guess the question will be how long I can continue. And then I think the other thing that, probably plays a little bit into my sort of uncertainty, Kev, is the 58K was pretty flat. And so that was probably not a great representation of what Comrades is going to be like. Great Ocean Road, different sort of course, but it has got a lot of hills in it. And so that 44K race had about 550 meters of elevation. So actually, if you think about it, it's actually half the elevation of Comrades, and it's also half the distance. So I think that's actually quite a good representation of, the amount of elevation I'm going to have to cover, albeit the profile is quite different. But yeah, look, I mean, it's going to come down to pace, and the more I think about it, the more I think I've just got to go out really conservatively. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good. That brings it into context. I've been noticing your paces on those runs, and you've been solid throughout your training in terms of your pacing. I guess, yeah, the profile obviously will determine how you vary that pace, and obviously how you build out your race plan might be dependent on those hills in certain spots and where you can actually pick up some pace in the latter sections, or even some of the downhills in the earlier parts. So that'll be important, but it's great to see that, particularly in terms of that last run, you've covered roughly half the elevation that Comrades has, and covered that distance in your sort of desired time, or pace, should I say. So that should stand you in good stead. The other thing I thought we should bring back into the equation is we've spoken a lot about the why of running. We've spoken about your values and how important those are in your running journey. We've also spoken about goals, and I know, in the last episode you spoke a bit about the goals you have for Comrades, and then you also dropped your mantra in, which I really loved, which was keep going, keep growing. So I'm just wondering how those things are percolating in your mind around how you build those into your plan and stay true to those things as well. So how's that feeling for you, and how are you anticipating building that into your race plan?
Yeah, no, spot on, Kev. I mean, you spoke a bit about getting into the zone as well, and I feel like that's the part that's dropped off. Although I've ticked all most of my training sort of sessions, etc., and on paper it looks good. I've found the last few weeks quite taxing in terms of just managing life, basically. I mean, obviously there's a lot of running that's happened there, but life carries on, as we all know. Being super busy at work, there's been a bit of travel involved. There's just a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
So where I find I'm lacking at the moment is actually getting myself in the zone and really getting in that right sort of mental space. But to your point, I think it's exactly those things, like thinking about why you're doing it, those underpinning values, and all those things that are going to get me into the right mental zone. So I'm actually quite confident that I will get there. I just need to probably, in the next couple of weeks, pay more attention to that. And, when we get on the plane in 2 weeks' time, we've got a week leading into Comrades. I think that's when I'll really get into the zone. But nothing's changed for me in terms of, why I'm doing it and how important it is. I just probably haven't had a lot of time to reflect on that in the last few weeks.
Yeah, and just reminding yourself of those things, because that's going to be important as you're running it. That when it gets tough, it's reminding yourself of why it's important, why you're doing it, and that gives you the mental toughness to tough it out, I'd imagine. That's great, Hill, and I think you will certainly in that week that you've got just prior, will obviously be in country, and we'll be together, and I think you can hopefully really focus then on that, and I think that gives you a good time to acclimatize as well. I know we spoke, and I put you onto a podcast which is well worth a listen to, from the Stimulate Run guys. They put out some really good stuff, and there was one that came out a few days ago from one of the great legends of Comrades. Barry Holland was being interviewed, and it's a fascinating listen. And they were sort of asking him really about his race plan, and what does it look like, and how does he unpack the profile, and how does he run certain sections of the race, and how does he recover, how does he prepare, etc. And I thought a bit that stood out for me was, just in terms of, what's changed over the years. Have things changed in the game of running that have made things easier or better, or that athletes have found have given them great gains? I mean, I would probably say the shoes have maybe changed a bit, and I'm a bit of a fan of faster shoes. But frankly, I don't think shoes are going to help you too much with Comrades. But interestingly, he sort of said that there were three things that he felt were, consistent and that haven't changed. And I'll give you those three things, and then I'm going to ask you to rate each of those out of 10 in preparation for Comrades. So the first was around your DNA and your genetics. So effectively, what's been passed down by your parents and through your genes is, and another way of maybe looking at that is your talent. So how talented a runner are you? So think about that while I give you the second one. And then secondly is about mental toughness, about your head effectively. So, in your training and over the years as you've run, how have you really been able to tough things out? And how do you know that when the going gets tough, you've got what it takes to push through? So that's the mental toughness part. Again, I'm going to ask you for a score out of 10. So let that one sit for a while. And then the third aspect was around training. So he's basically saying, look, you have three things: genetics, your head, and then the training that you put in. And I think you just commented that you felt that you were, you've done well in that regard. So I'm sensing a good score for that one. But again, I'll let you score those up in a moment. But I thought that was interesting, and it could be quite a nice little formula to work into your race plan around, if you've got some confidence on those aspects, it does help build out, I suppose, your race plan a little bit further. So here we go. For number one, for the talent side of it, DNA and genetics, what's your score out of 10?
That's actually probably the hardest one, Kev. And I could flick that around at you because I think we're probably very similar in that regard. I know we've pretty much got identical times at almost all distances. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to think we're a little bit above average. I mean, maybe one way to look at it is I'm certainly not anywhere near the top, and I never would have been, for instance, able to run at an elite level. But one way to look at it is, the age grading scores that you get on your various runs. And I think, we've consistently been in that sort of 70th sort of percentile, which would suggest from recollection that you sort of are a state level runner, if you like. So yeah, I think slightly above average. I'll probably give myself a 6 out of 10 on that one, Kev.
Yeah, I'd probably, I mean, that's a good answer, but I'd probably rate you a bit higher than that personally. So I was going to say 7, but anyway, look, that's, you don't want to get overconfident. So I'll take the 6. All right. What about mental toughness? How do you rate yourself on that one? I mean, you've been a sports person all your life. You've had a, whether it was tennis or whether it was other pursuits, and even from a work perspective, there's a lot of mental toughness involved in what you've done. So what do you reckon on that one?
Yeah, I feel like you're setting me up here, Kev. If I don't deliver on the day, right? You'll go, what do you mean you said your mental toughness was good? But yeah, I mean, this is probably one area where I have felt I've had a bit of a strength. Certainly when I think about my running, even when at times when my training wasn't necessarily spot on, I have been able to mentally tough through things. And so, yeah, if I had to sort of think about the physical versus the mental, I actually rate my mental over the physical. So, yeah, I'd probably give myself either 7 or 8 out of 10 there, Kev.
Nice. That's a good one, because I mean that's going to be very critical, irrespective of your training and your form. There's no doubt from what I hear that every single runner goes through this and will go through this on Comrades, and probably at several junctures, not just at one particular point. So So that should stand you in good stead. I'm not trying to put you under pressure, but I think it's good to identify, what is a strength for you, and then you can keep that figure in your mind when you're running it, and that'll keep ringing in your head that that's a strength. I need to play to that. Okay, and then the last one is your training and call it your form, and how you're sort of feeling about that, and how well you've stuck to your program and your sort of fitness levels, if you like. So how would you rate yourself and how your training has gone?
Yeah, I mean, I'll rate it on the basis of the program that I signed up for, because obviously I was never going to really outstrip that significantly. So I've tried to stick to that program, which was the Bill Rowan Medal program. So I think this one's actually, as we've said before, I mean, I feel pretty good about my training. I certainly have done most of the sessions. I'll probably rate myself down a little bit because I would a little bit underdone on the strength and a little bit underdone, I think, on the hills. So yeah, I'd say 8 out of 10. I'd give myself on that, Kev.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I think that's it's gone exceedingly well for you. I mean, yes, I know you've had some hill sessions in there. You've had obviously your strength training, and I think those things you can never have enough of, albeit you've got to manage those things through your training as well, because otherwise you can't actually get to run your long runs because you're too fatigued and sore, etc. So I think you've had to have a balance on that. But I think if I look at what you've done in your training, I think you've done a fantastic job, and you've stuck to the program. And so you've got to put your trust in the program and the coach that's designed it as well. So those are some decent scores here, and hopefully that gives you a bit of confidence coming at it as well, and building out your race plan a little bit more. So I suppose one of the things you will be ruminating on now is how you're building all those aspects into your race plan. Are you actually planning to do a physical plan, a written plan, or is it just something you do more in your head?
Yeah, I mean, I will sort of write things down. I have actually started. I mean, in the past, I've put sort of time frames around different markers on the race, and quite sort of scientific around different times that I've wanted to hit different points in the race. But I'm very conscious with this one that because it's just such a big and long race, that I think you need to gauge it a little bit on the day, and so I don't want to get too locked into times.
Yeah.
So broadly, I've definitely thought about, the ideal seems to be to run relatively even splits. Now that sounds a bit crazy, and if you look at the stats, most people don't run even splits; they run positive splits.
Yeah.
But because it's a significant downhill second half, the thinking is it should, on paper, be 10 minutes quicker. And then if you take the fatigue into account, it sort of evens it up a bit.
Yeah.
So that's sort of broadly where I'm thinking, what pace do I need to run on average, that is, because I think there'll be Ks with those hills where, you'll be significantly over, and then there'll be other Ks you're under. But I'm sort of thinking, what average pace do I need to run to not blow myself up, and sort of run conservatively so that I have a level of confidence that I'm going to finish it. So that's sort of how I'm thinking about it. What that pace is, I haven't sort of landed on yet, Kev, but I suspect it's slower over the first half than 6 minutes.
Yeah, no, I mean it's maybe as well what you've got is you've got the ability to look at a few different scenarios, maybe sort of high road, middle road, low road type scenarios, and sort of map it out on that basis to say, you've got to manage your efforts, and if things are getting tough, you've got to scale things back because you don't want to blow. So if you then go back to your middle road option and that's feeling good, then you sort of stick to your middle road as opposed to being on your high road. But yeah, maybe some scenarios sort of around it without getting too technical. But a lot will depend on, I would imagine, sort of the feel of it. But you've got a reasonable idea from your training around you know, how you're managing that effort, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think there's been some good advice. In fact, tonight, I think, which will be late night times, I'll just watch the recording. They actually have the race strategy webinar on Coach Parry, and I know on one of the earlier ones, he talked about, the different walk run strategies for different sort of time goals. So the one that sort of applies to me is, basically saying every 6Ks, when you're taking in whatever sustenance at the tables, walk for a minute, which I think you need to do anyway. Very hard, as we know, to drink and run and those sorts of things at the same time. And then the hills was the interesting one, because as we just said, there's some really challenging hills, and the guidance there was, from recollection, run 2 minutes, walk 1 minute on the really steep hills. So that, I mean, those are the sorts of things that I've got in the back of my mind. But as I said, I want to sort of feel it out a little bit, because I think it's going to depend how I feel on the day of it as well.
Yeah, interestingly, Barry Holland talks about, his runs have been quite time focused, and as an experienced Comrades runner, he's probably got more focused on time and getting to silvers and even gold, I believe. Or not gold, but he's got like 6.5 hours, I think. But one of the things he spoke about in terms of walking was, that old sort of chestnut where you pick out a lamppost or a watering table and go, right, I'm running up to that table, and then this is where your mental toughness comes in again, of going, right, okay, I'm, when I get to that table, I will start running again. And then, what he said is, over time, you start challenging yourself to shortening those walks, potentially, and making sure your time doesn't fall away. But again, I think there's just so many different methods of doing it, to get too technical about your race plan and not having any feel on the day, is also probably not the answer. But I think important that you do plan your race and race your plan, as he likes to call it.
Yeah.
So having your plan and trying to stick as best as you can to it will obviously get you to your time. But having enough built in that you can have secondary goals or low road options as well, if ultimately what you want to do is make sure you finish.
Yeah. The other one that we haven't spoken about, but I think is incredibly important in the plan, is obviously the sort of nutrition side of things. And it's a hard one because, it's important in a marathon, but it's not as critical in as it will be at Comrades. And so, I need to work that out in a little bit more detail. I do, again, in the back of my mind, have a plan. But I have to say that on that 58K dress rehearsal run, I definitely, and maybe it was good that I had those learnings. A few things didn't work out that well in terms of the nutrition side. So definitely things I can adjust there, but that's going to have to be a critical feature of the plan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, Hill, that's very insightful on your part around where you're at, and I hope there's some takeaways for you as well in relation to how things are shaping up. I think all up, it's pretty positive, but you've got a tough 3 weeks ahead, even though you're tapering. There's a lot to think about and work through, but I've no doubt we will have a successful week in the lead up that'll get you really focused, so certainly looking forward to helping you bring that all together and reducing kind of the stress of the situation and making sure it falls back to something that you make sure you enjoy the day out there. That's probably primary, and likewise we want to enjoy watching you and cheering you on. So we'll get focused on that. Probably leave it there just in terms of time, and we probably got another couple of episodes coming before we actually get across to South Africa, so we'll brush up on a few other things just before then. But in terms of quotes, I thought,
let me just stop you before you throw the quote in. I'm sure people are dying to know how you're going, because I know you've obviously been on this sort of treatment front now from an Achilles perspective. So how's all that going?
Yeah, I mean it's a slow burn, so I've kind of had to, be very patient with that because it's not a successive sort of like 1 week treatment and then next week again. I mean, I've got a 4 week buffer between injections, so I'm waiting for the second lot. I think I previously said that, shortly after injection, I had quite a lot of pain and for a couple of days was hobbling around, but that sort of was the desired impact that you want. And then it sort of settled back down again. So, it's sort of fine at the moment. But of course, I'm not running and deliberately not doing so and just keeping up the cycling and starting to enjoy that. So I've had some nice cycling hit outs and back with some of the old crew I used to cycle with. So I'm really enjoying that. And then just really looking forward to the next injection, I guess. Not the injection itself, but the view is that the more you sort of can get these injections done and the rest period in between, the more likely it is to be successful. So just before going to South Africa, I'll have that next one. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm more or less come to terms with it. I wouldn't say completely. Would very much like to still be doing Comrades, but I'm feeling a bit more comfortable and starting to listen to running podcasts and the Comrades podcast and getting excited for you. And so yeah, hopefully I can be of benefit in that respect and live vicariously through you on the day.
I'm sure you will, Kevin. You're going to be a huge support, I'm sure. I was just reflecting on how many people are actually going to be there, so that's going to be a really nice part of it. It does put a bit of pressure on, but anyway, I'll deal with that.
Yeah, but I think our job is to try and take the pressure off you. So yeah, we've got to just try and work through that as well because yeah, it's a lot. And I was thinking about sort of getting ready to go work-wise as well, getting things done. And I don't have the training component and the prep components that you have. So it's a big thing. So, if we can take some of that off your shoulders, that's what we'll attempt to do. So yeah, but there's a very pertinent quote I found today, and hopefully it helps you as well in terms of managing your effort and your energy on the day. So this one, I don't get the pronunciation. I know we always struggle with the pronunciation of these philosophers, but this one's Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is a Chinese philosopher, and he was famous for the quote that's probably also pertinent, but it's not the one for today, which was "The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step."
Yeah.
So you probably heard that one.
Yeah.
But he's got a few others, and I really like this one in terms of what we've been talking about today. And as I said, managing your effort on race day. So it goes: the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. So it's kind of sounds like a little bit of a negative one, but I think by the same token, it's I like to liken it to a torch, and particularly when you're cycling, I normally like to have my torch on fairly bright, and I find halfway through the ride that the torch fades out, and I can't continue unless I put it onto blink mode. So yeah, just in terms of managing your effort, and we spoke about the pacing, and we spoke about how we've got to take the profile into account, etc. Hopefully that one helps you with your further race planning, but just managing your effort on the day as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good one, Kev. And hopefully I don't have to go into blink mode.
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent is. Is it crawling or something like that? But
Yeah.
no, hopefully not. So we look forward to being at the end at Kingsmead, banging against the advertising boards with you flying through at the end. But only good thoughts now. I think you got to keep positive, and you've done the work, and you've got some positive ratings there that you've self-assessed yourself on. And I'd probably self-assess you a little bit higher on the genetics. So I think all up, you're looking good.
Yeah, thanks, Kev. Well, it's been good to catch up, and as you say, well, not long to go until we get on that plane and head towards South Africa.
Thanks everyone for listening, and if you put up with our podcast thus far, you've done very, very well. And I hope you found it interesting, and it inspires you to head towards an ultra marathon, and in particular Comrades. So until next time, signing out from B2.
See you, everyone.
See ya. Bye.
This day is gonna be the greatest memory, making history. Let's go. You don't need no luck with that golden touch. Time to light it up. Let's go. Get ready for it. Get ready for it. Get ready for it.